Hey everyone, welcome to another live stream. Today we're going to talk about monster fish. It's been on my topic list for over a year, and in general I don't want to talk about it only because what I found in the store over the years working at the pet store was that those who wanted to learn about them never kept monster fish anyway. Those that bought monster fish didn't want to learn about them. But I do like talking about them because I very much enjoy large fish. Not all large fish. I particularly am drawn to the ones that aren't aggressive. But, I've kept a lot of different things over the years. Before I was on YouTube, I actually got my start in monster fish keeping. I had on the monster fish keeping forums. And, bigger the better. But learned lots of things that, mostly a lot of these fish are very, very difficult to keep what I consider morally in the aquarium hobby. Now, everyone's morality is going to be different there. Some people think, red-tailed cat in a 75-gallon tank is fine. Some say 200,000 gallons, and all in between. And if you don't know what a red-tailed catfish is, it's just a very large catfish that gets upwards of 4 feet. I mean, that might be a bit extreme. They almost never get there because they're not given a chance to grow that big. But 2+ feet is not that hard to achieve. So for the sake of the conversation today, I think, what do you need to know before you start getting into some of these bigger fish? And so first, as a monster fish, I would say things are going to get over like a foot to 14 inches, I consider monster fish. So the reason I pick that is because that's kind of over the size of like a 55-gallon and would be kind of cramped into a 75-gallon, being 18 inches front to back on a 75 and only about 14 on a 55. Some fish like an Oscar, very popular in the hobby, not always considered a monster fish because it takes so long for it to actually max out at that full, 14, 15-inch size. Same with a lot of the Central and South American cichlids. They get large, but it takes so long to get there, they don't normally fit in that monster fish category. Whereas something like a red-tailed catfish can hit that 18-inch mark in under a year easily if you're trying to. So that's, we're going to start with everything that's kind of a bigger thing. And the things I think to know are, it's, when you look at the statistics of people who buy these fish, we all start with, I've got X amount of a size of aquarium, right? And it's just a temporary home to quarantine and grow it out a little bit. And we all have the intention of, well, don't worry. When my next paycheck, when Christmas comes, when tax return time comes, I'm going to get that large aquarium. I'll get it when I need it. And what we find is far too often, that time either doesn't come or someone gets bored of it. And I definitely fall into the camp of I get very bored of the very large fish. And it's because a lot of times they're not compatible with other stuff. Or you think they are and it's not working out. That happens quite often because as we get these large fish, we start out with these smaller fish. And they're compatible and we usually pay a good amount of money for them. We seek them out and they're amazing. And then as they kind of get bigger, and let's say this 300-gallon tank, now they're starting to fight a little more, and they're having problems, and it's hard to get food. And so then you have to start making decisions. And so that's usually where we don't end up with enough large aquariums. And I've seen a lot of people really try well, but it's difficult. So the thing to know before you really get into them is try and get yourself like a wet pet. Now, what that is, that's like one fish. So like Murphy, ladybird, these are very large fish long term, and I'm only aiming to keep one. Well, now it's two, one at the store and one at home, as opposed to monster fish community tanks, where I've done that in the past, and you can actually see videos on the channel. And I was actually in the Greater Seattle Aquarium Society home show. And they had my 305-gallon tank, which was a community monster fish tank, basically. Maboo puffer, had iridescent sharks, fire eel, that kind of stuff, right? And that compatibility issue came in. I don't have enough space and money to do multiple large tanks. And so over the years, I ended up paring down to just Mabu puffers. Now, someone in the chat earlier was like, oh, I just picked up 2.5 weeks ago my red-tailed catfish. Red-tailed catfish are super cool. And I think the longer you're in the hobby, you can kind of appreciate something, and maybe you don't have to own it, because that's my stance. My stance is like, that fish is super cool. I visited some people when we went to California. This person had it in the 4,000 gallon pond. That thing was amazing, and it had lots of other big Tarashukan Niger catfish and stuff, like these big huge catfish. Very cool to watch someone else keep and feed. And they had a barn filled with these very, very large ponds, basically. Now, that doesn't work in my fish room because I'm never going to have something that big. And then if I did have something that big, you got to ask yourself, do I want to wrap up my Saturdays or Sundays maintaining a large tank for one or a couple of animals? At the beginning, we always say yes. It's like, of course, this thing's amazing. Long term, though, it ends up being a lot of work, and it's on a curve. Like your 3-inch red-tailed catfish is super easy to take care of, right? You throw some food in, it eats it. It can eat stuff the size of its body. It's amazing, and it gets growing and growing. You give it a little bigger tank. Now it's up to a 55, still amazing. When you start getting into hundreds of gallons, then all of a sudden you get the same like interaction where it's eating and stuff, but the cleaning time keeps going up. And so a lot of times that's where I find the drop off starts happening, when it's like, okay, you've already got it in a 125 or 180 gallon and it's got to go to a bigger tank. Are people willing to spend the thousands of dollars? And then the maintenance time to keep that fish, most people go, well, I'd actually like to trade it in and get something else, right? Like, oh, I want to go shovel nose catfish, or oh, I want to go with this giant school of silver dollars, or whatever it's going to be. So that's where the wet pet comes in. Like, really try and find something you fall in love with that you're going to set up a forever home. Not that you have to have it right away, but you should definitely know, where's it going to go? Do I have the money set aside? What is my end goal in mind? And not just like, well, if it lives long enough. That's, unfortunately, the sad story about arowanas. We see them, videos on YouTube all the time, that kind of stuff. They jump all the time because the aquariums aren't large enough to house these fish, and it's only a matter of time before they bounce out of there. That's the sad truth, and that's the thing. That's what we see on the internet. If you work at a pet store and you sell arowanas, which for a long time we didn't sell arowanas, but we ended up providing the customer service for people who owned arowanas either way, and so then we were just like offering all the advice and help and all that, and weren't making any money on it. So then we will custom order arowanas. We'll bring them in every once in a while if we haven't had one in like 6 months, because usually there's a few people asking. I mean, working at a pet store every day, someone's calling up or asking, do you have any arowanas? Whether they're intending to buy that day or not. So they're just a very likable fish. They're cool, but in the right environment, and that's the thing is, I think the longer you're in a hobby, the more you realize, is this for me? Is this not for me? And like, I think arowanas are cool and other people own them. I don't own any. I owned a albino silver one, which was mostly for YouTube and advertising. It was a cool pet, but I knew I was going to sell it once it got larger, which we did. And so that's, I'm trying to think, like, I'm only talking bad about monster fish right now, and they are amazing. It's just kind of like, it's like getting a Great Dane or something, in that it's an investment, a 10-year investment into food and this giant animal and all of that. Well, Great Dane might be too specialized, because a Great Dane you actually have to go and seek out. It might be more accustomed to like a large, I don't want to give this dog a bad rap. Maybe, for lack of a better term. So, first of all, I love pit bulls because I think they're just big puppies that, I love to sleep with them on top of them. They sleep on top of you. Like, I fall in love with anyone's big kind of pit bullish type of dog because I think they're amazing. But there are a bunch of people that get them, and then once they, you know, maybe they get bored of them, or maybe they don't know how to handle them, or whatever, right? For whatever reason, big dogs that look scary end up at the shelter a lot, right? And so that's kind of what happens with monster fish too, is these big fish, they look kind of scary, they swallow stuff, they end up back at pet stores looking for a new home, and then they're, you know, they kind of get caught in a cycle. So you've got this like red-tailed catfish that's this big and it's $40, and you buy it and you put all this money and time and energy into it, now it's this big, and you bring it back to a pet store and it's still gonna be lucky to sell for $40 because you're like trying to find someone to take it. And then when it's this big, now it's free to a good home. And when it's this big, I will pay you to find this a home. That's unfortunately how it goes too often. And so I really would like to see more people just like almost like have to visit a breeder or something like that. Like go visit that aquarium with that, you know, adult fish and really fall in love with it, have the whole family know what they're getting into, know that, oh my God, this thing's gonna last 30 years, you know, with those bigger catfish, or, you know, an arowana, or whatever you want to do. Even, you know, there's a lot of stuff that gets sold even at PetSmarts and Petcos and chain stores, like iridescent sharks. You know, the ones I had, the largest ones were about 20 to 22 inches. And I can give you the sad story on that. Working at a pet store, it came in, it was large, you know, and you get that standard, like, I've got a really big fish at home, I want to bring it in, and like, oh, okay. We said, you know, initially we're like, no, we already have, you know, Pangasius or iridescent sharks in this 220-gallon, 8-foot long tank, and we're already like overfilled with, like, we can't take more, you know. And they're like, well, we'll give you the whole tank, we'll give you everything. And so my boss was like, well, we'll at least make money on the tank and all of that. And so we end up taking it in, and it comes in, and it's so big that it touches front to back. So it's in a 75-gallon acrylic tank, and so that's 18 inches, and the fish is actually like 22 inches, right? 20 to 22 inches. So it has to be at a diagonal, and it had to rub its eye and its tail or its pectoral fins against the glass at all times. By having to do that, the pectoral fins were rubbed to the bone, and the eyes were all bulged out, and it was blind. And so my wife and I named him Andre the Giant. And I think I actually have, you can see Andre the Giant in, I'm going to switch to this real quick. Let's see if it works. Of course, oh, there we go. So now you can see this fish, let's see if I can get it. This fish right here is Andre the Giant, right? And so my attempt was to see, in this custom aquarium, it had lived its life in a 75-gallon aquarium, which was 4 feet by 18 inches. It now is in a tank that is 6 feet by 5 feet front to back, right? So pretty large aquarium, especially at this point in my hobby. You know, this is back in 2010 was when this was shot. And I got other iridescent sharks. You can see some back here. This is on mute, so maybe won't be too bad. But you can see there's a school of silver dollars in here. There's a school of these iridescent sharks, right? And I've got, you know, Siamese algae eaters there. There's spotted silver dollars. So yeah, and flagtail Procholotus. So the goal was, could I calm this fish down? Could I give it a good life? Could Corey save it? You know, a lot of times, you know, I could save this fish type of deal. And the long answer is, or the short answer is, no, I couldn't. I tried so many different setups, plants on the sides, plants on the back, blacking it out, doing anything I could, but no matter what I did, it would end up bouncing off the walls. And the reality was, it's a 2-foot fish almost in only a 6-foot long tank that wanted to school and swim as a pack really quickly. So it would dart. We tried no wood, we tried adding wood, and so that's where you can see, like, you can see his eye right here. He's actually pushing against the glass because that's a learned behavior. And the skin did grow back over the bones at least. But, you know, this fish was massive. And we actually ended up donating it long term to a guy that was breeding stingrays and had very, very large ponds. Because at a certain point, we realized there was no way we could give it a proper home, even though we were the next step in line, you know? So someone had bought this at a Petco or PetSmart as a shark, quote unquote, and paid $6 for it. Then it arrived at the pet store I worked at. Then I kept it for like a year or 18 months or something like that. Then we moved it on to those ponds when I was going to have to move, basically. I was getting ready to move and didn't know I was necessarily starting the store at that point, but you can see a very young me right there. And I'm even wearing an Arowana Monster Fish Keeper shirt. So back in that era. And it was all on a custom welded steel stand and, you know, in my garage and very large. And this is the origination of Dorcula, my wife's username. This was a giraffe catfish. Get very, very large. When I did start the store, I ended up donating because I wanted to reduce down. So I am the person I'm talking about of like, oh, you got rid of that pet. And for me, it was a compatibility issue. This thing would eat all the food and would get aggressive with Hank, my first Mabu puffer. So that's where we ended up deciding to get rid of that. This is actually a big tail for an Adonis that was over a foot. An Adonis plecostomus. I don't know if we have any good stuff there. This is actually a turtle. This is a Chinese soft shell. And unbeknownst to me at the time, I think this turtle might have been illegal in Washington, but there was a pet store selling them, and I was none the wiser. And yeah, so yeah, you can see it kind of swimming around here. Had a bunch of big clown loaches in there as well, and yeah, so very cool to look at. Tons of we were doing auto water changes even back then. And the food bill was crazy, the amount of food that would go in. I mean, all of those black sharks you just saw, iridescent sharks, they were about a foot. You know, well, between like 8 inches and a foot. There's young me. And you can see, so when I talk about in the background where my first fish room was in the garage, and we have behind me actually is washer and dryer. That's how I set up the drip system. You can see I was lighting with shop lights with T8 bulbs. Yeah, there you go. Insulated the windows, put styrofoam between the two, had a big sump down here and a dehumidifier. I was feeding cocktail shrimp to be able to, you know, afford to feed all these things, because if you fed them the way they would eat, they'd eat a pound of food a day, no problem, and more if you allowed them to. So that's another kind of a thing where you don't realize that it's gonna be like, well, a pound of food every day, that really does add up in waste and in just money. So yeah, you can see I have the Monster Fish Tank or Fish Keepers sticker. I forgot I ever put a sticker on there. I'm usually not one to do that. But yeah, so let me hop back to here and find my chat again. I want to keep talking about monster fish, but you know, I've done a lot. I really do like monster fish. I marvel at everyone else's monster fish, and I know that for me to do it right, I can only keep a few to really do it as best I can. I mean, even like moving to the new fish room, right? I've got the 800-gallon tank behind me, and Ladybird is in a small tank right now. And when I say small tank, she's in a 230-gallon custom aquarium that's 7 feet long and 30 inches front to back. That's the small tank, right? So when you start working with these monster fish, stuff like that is smaller tanks, and that's what becomes difficult, is like planning and moving. Like we eventually want to upgrade Murphy's tank, right? Well, another giant tank's got to go somewhere. We might have to pull that tank out, whereas we have to build a pond for him to live in while we set up the new tank. Takes at least a few days. So logistics of some of this starts getting crazy. And on average, you know, unless you've already bought your house and things like that, we move every 3 to 5 years or whatever it's going to be. You change jobs, all that, and it becomes really hard to actually move, you know, your 70-pound red-tail catfish, or, you know, your school of bala sharks. You know, bala sharks, I tried them in that tank as well. And if you know anything about bala sharks, you know they get to a foot to 16 inches. And I bought 12 of them, grew them out, and I had never been able to find bala sharks that wouldn't just like bounce off the walls, right? And I thought, well, I want to do a test. I want to put them in this tank. It's about as big a tank as anyone could hope for at home. You know, like, I mean, yes, there's someone out there that's like, I put them in 10,000 gallons. Sure. But for the amount of bala sharks that are sold at every pet store, because they're one of the best selling fish, almost never will I get something that big. And I had always told people, don't buy them, because no matter what you do, you can never have a tank that's big enough to keep them from bouncing off the walls. Well, in that tank, they still would bounce off the walls. They were just so quick and so darty. And maybe I never found the magic combo, but I tried a lot. Different lighting, different backing and sides on the tanks, putting in plants, taking out plants, putting different wood setups, taking out wood setups. And I could never get them to where they wouldn't get startled and you hear them just kind of on the side of the tank. Like, and you would know that that's, you know, they would split open their, for lack of a better term, their nose or their mouth or their face area. And so it can be difficult. And so that's, you know, and you got to think about that as 12-foot-long fish that you're feeding, and they're, you know, gluttons and all of that. Very cool, still cool, but just didn't seem right to me, you know. And that's a lot of it, is like, does this seem like it's okay? Do I seem like I'm doing an okay job? And it's very easy to get in over your head, because a lot of the information with monster fish isn't super well documented. If you were to look up something as common as a red-tailed catfish, you're going to see, well, red-tailed cats, maybe Texas shovelnose and shovelnose, you're going to see like, you know, 1,000 different people have them, and they all get them up to maybe 2 feet, but almost no one gets them past that percentage-wise. Like, okay, 5% of people that buy one will ever get one past that and keep them till they die. Always something like, oh, big power outage happens, or they had to move, or they had to surrender it, or they got bored of it, or it ate the other one. That's the problem I ran into. You spend like a tigrinus catfish, right? Let me see if I can pull one of those up for you guys. You spend a lot of money on one tigrinus catfish. There we go. And if we go to images, so we look at these catfish here, right? And they're black and white striped. They get huge, and they're magnificent. They're like whiskers get super duper long, and they're great. And a fish like this, I think the one I got was about $500, and that was a deal from another store owner that they wanted $750 for it. Before that, I wanted a Juranese, it looks very similar to a tigrinus catfish. And what you find is, oh my gosh, they're very finicky. And then as I finally got him eating, then he started eating other fish because he just swallowed it. And so you run into these compatibility problems, and you're already $500+ into a fish, and you don't want to lose it. And now you're trying to find a new home, and now you're trying to do the next thing. And it's kind of it's this weird pseudo hobby almost. Instead of this relaxing fish keeping, it's more of like stressful, like, oh my gosh, he just ate my bicher, right? My Enlarichi bicher, he just ate it. He's not there anymore, or whatever you're doing. So, you know, and it's very addictive, these monster fish, because they're super cool. Everyone that sees them goes, wow, that's so cool. A lot of them are Jurassic fish, or some of the oldest fish species we know of. But I will say, for all of that, I find much more enjoyment in my smaller aquariums. They're easier to maintenance, and I'm fascinated by almost all types of fish. So yeah, can you find a giant tigrinus catfish, and is it super cool? Yes, but there's going to be like, maybe I can find some. Let me think of the right Synodontis. Decorus, maybe? That one, that's not striped enough. That's more spotty. Usually you can find something that's in a monster cat or monster fish size in a smaller package. Now, there are, you know, like, sure, is a pea puffer cool? Yes. Is a Mabu puffer a different style of cool? I think so. But if I couldn't keep them, I would just keep a smaller puffer. And I think that's what people should really focus on. One of the bigger problems is a lot of these monster fish will have very big spawns. And so when they do spawn, you can get them pretty cheap. It's, you know, you can sometimes find stuff where it's just far too cheap for the type of fish. And then, you know, like let's say red-tailed cats, if I can buy them at $2 a piece, if I want to be irresponsible, I bring in 100 of those and I sell them at $10 each. And now there's 100 red-tailed cats in my local area. And that's what happens is, how is that anything but a problem? When 100 red-tailed catfish enter a local population, it's going to slam all the stores, and there's not going to be, 1,000+ gallon aquariums, 100 of them laying around in a local area like that. So that's kind of what happens. And we try really hard to not sell things where we think there's not going to be a good chance of it living its life out there. It's really, really difficult, because sometimes, and I always remember myself, I would not have sold a Maboo puffer to me, because I'm just a guy that worked at a pet store and I've been lusting after one. I had a 300-gallon aquarium, but that was it, and I knew stuff, but I don't know that the 23-year-old version of me, or whatever it was, 25, I don't know that I'm the poster child for like, that guy will take great care of this puffer. I don't think that was probably me at all. It worked out though, and so then I always think about, like, you can't always know. You got to kind of go with a little bit of, you got to give people a chance. But there are sometimes when you just know, when they're like, go ahead and give me that Maboo puffer, 6 African cichlids, that red tail, and that saltwater clownfish. Like, obviously, that's kind of a train wreck, but it's difficult. And our own store, at least, everything we sell, we'll at least take back for free. And so we try really hard not to sell monster fish, because we don't really have a good place to put them, and it takes a really long time to find them an appropriate home. And so that's maybe the last thing before I dive into some questions is, if you do have to move, give it up, whatever is going to happen, and we've heard it all, right? I have to move, I lost my job, I'm getting a divorce, I broke up with my girlfriend, this is happening, I'm having a kid now. Like, all of those things happen all the time to all kinds of people. We can't know. And so the problem becomes, even if you love it, it can be really hard. So if you have that pit bull, or that, more aggressive looking dog that, you might love and your family loves, but if you had to give it up, it might be really hard to find a new home because other people aren't ready for it. And so that's the thing that I always, what's your plan if this doesn't work out? Because too often people get a pretty aggressive tank going. It's like, well, what are you going to do when this doesn't work? Because we're special ordering it in for you. I get that. But you're not going to let it die, because that's not a good idea. But if it doesn't work out, what's the plan then for this fish that's, yes, it's worth money, but who else is going to take it? And when it comes to monster fish, it doesn't even have to be aquarium fish. Koi, this happens with koi all the time. People sell their house, right? And then they don't know what to do with the koi. Like, I am going to have to sell this house eventually. What am I going to do with the koi? Either they move to my new house with me, or B, I sell them at the fish store I own. Most people aren't going to own a fish store, and it's way harder to sell a koi that's this big than to sell one that's this big. Because everyone wants these guys. $10? Sure. Oh, this thing, you sell it for like $100 or something, just so that it has a chance to go to a pond or an aquarium or something that's of the right size. Because if you just put $10 on that, I'll buy it for my dad's pond, or I'll buy it for Nana's pond. And it's like they've got a whiskey barrel that is, more koi than it is water. So even koi and stuff like that, all the fish that get, basically above a couple of feet, they become really hard to home and house, just because most tanks that are produced aren't bigger than that. Like, even 210 gallons are only 24 inches front to back. And so it gets really difficult to find homes when the fish outgrow normal production tanks, because then you have to buy custom tanks, and something like the 800 gallon, you're spending $20,000+ by the time you're done. Same with the tank Murphy's in. I think it was like 14, might have been 12, something like that. It's been a long time now, but they get to be very expensive. And what I always tell people is, anyone who has a tank that large, they have plans for it. So a lot of times we'll get, can't Corey just put that in the 800 gallon? Like, if I wanted that fish in the 800 gallon, I would source that fish and put it in, not the reverse. And so that's where when you say, or you hear people say like, oh, well, I'll donate it to the zoo or I'll donate it to the aquarium. They get a call every day. Hey, you want 12 more pacu? You want this catfish? You want this? You want that? And it goes along the same lines. If they did, they would already have that exhibit set up, you know, and if they ever want some, they could make one Facebook post and fulfill it. So, you know, really you should take it on to what is my plan for this fish long term, even when something goes wrong in my life. That's really what you got to think about, because it's really hard to find them a good home. And whatever you do, don't release in the wild. I've seen that happen. Please don't do that. All right, I'm going to jump into some of the questions here. If there's anything about monster fish. Are monster fish dangerous? Most of them, I would say, are not that dangerous to humans. You know, maybe some stingrays, maybe some of the more aggressive things that could bite you. Puffers can do it. There's other stuff that can do it, but in general, they can, like, you know, maybe you get a butocophori, right? And it's a 2-foot, real aggressive cichlid, and it could take a bite and, like, it'd be like your dog biting you, like my chihuahua biting me. Like, ow, that hurts, and maybe you'd bleed. But dangerous, I don't know if dangerous is the right word for it. It could hurt you, technically. You can be knocked out by arowanas. I had that happen one time where in the same 220-gallon tank, I had this big arowana, and I had to catch it because someone was buying it for $100. And we got the big old, like, koi bag around it, plastic bag, and I was lifting it out, right? And it's heavy because it's full of water. And it was the first time I'd ever really caught one that way. I had done it with a pillowcase at home before, that kind of stuff, you know, because you got to support the whole body of it. But I'd never done it in the big bag. And so as I'm bringing it out of the big bag, because it's filled with water, it launched out of the bag and nearly hit me in the face. And they're known as the bony tongue fish because their head is so bony and it's like a rocket. You can get knocked out by it. Luckily, it sailed over my head and landed in a pond right behind me. And so we bagged it up again and it was fine. But I learned a valuable lesson, like you have to close the end of that bag because it will jump out. They're obviously very good jumpers, but you're just trying with all your might to lift that giant bag of water with the fish after wrestling with it, trying to get it in there without getting banged up for the last 20, 30 minutes. So, I mean, there is a little bit of danger there, and there's things like, you know, big lungfish that are crazy powerful, but, you know, I never got bit by one or anything, even though you had to handle it. But I'm not too afraid of them. Usually they're kind of gentle giants when it comes to, you know, if they're a fish that's this big, we're a human that's way bigger. So, yes, they could do, you know, they could hurt you a little bit, but in general, most species that you'll deal with that are in the monster fish aren't dangerous outside of, you know, rays and a select few other types of fish. Pacu are the ones that should be banned from stores. Yeah, probably. I've definitely, you know, heard a lot of talk about that kind of stuff, and I kind of would be in favor of it. I could be in favor, honestly, of like any fish that grows over maybe 18 inches. You have to, I don't know, like apply for a permit or something. Permit might be the wrong word, but like register it, just so it's like they keep tabs on, like, dude, this is your 29th 2-foot plus fish. What are you doing with all these things, right? And so at least then, I feel like if you had to apply for or register it or something, anything that made you wait a day or two, there's a chance you wouldn't impulse buy it and take it home. And anyone that really wants, you know, a certain fish, like it took me over a year to get my Mubu puffer, and it's still love that fish to this day. And I think if you're really infatuated by something, you will take the time and you go, yeah, it's just a couple waiting days. You know, now I'm ready to go. I think that could be a good thing, because it's, you know, the reality is too often Pacu gets sold, and I saw it all the time in stores as piranhas, or, you know, like a substitute of it. Like, oh, this is the legal version. You know, it's like, no, it's not. I think it's giant. And it eats nuts and fruit. So, you know, that's another problem, is there's a lot of, I guess, shops that are either struggling or don't care and they just want the money. it can be very easy to make money on monster fish. If you got the right person looking for something, you charge them the right amount of money, and you know, there's lots of cool stuff though. That's, you know, like, oh, it's a giant datnoid, oh, it's a barramundi. There's almost no limit to the amount of giant fish, just like there's no limit to the amount of small fish. There's always another thing to be looking at, another rare pleco, another rare catfish, another, you know, whatever it's going to be, and they're all fascinating. That's, you know, I do believe that no matter what, most people are keeping them because they're fascinating. It might be because your buddies think it's cool to feed it a live mouse. Still fascinating. But yes, I appreciate a lot of fish, for sure. How many koi in a 2,500 gallon pond? Well, depending on, you know, water changes and, you know, how deep is the pond versus the size of it and all of that. You know, sometimes a real, you know, like a real koi enthusiast might throw out a number like 1 koi per 1,000 gallons. Some people might say as much as, or as low as 1 per 100 gallons. I think it's somewhere in between those two. You know, the question I would usually ask if someone came into our store and would ask, like, how many can I put in my pond? My first question would be like, well, how many can you appreciate? And, you know, explain, like, you know, maybe you really love dogs, right? But how many until you've got your fill of dogs? Is it 2? Is it 3? Are you a crazy person? You're 5 dogs, right? And maybe koi is the same way. Like, how many do you need before you're like, wow, that's my koi pond. I enjoy them. They kind of have names and I know them. You know, maybe that's 6 or 10, right? I would say you're better off going slow than, you know, getting a bunch. So Todd says, koi or pond fish? Left to interpretation. I've seen some very, very cool koi displays that are indoors in massive tanks. And I've even considered doing it in the 800 gallon and then getting bigger tanks. Koi and carp in general, like when you look at a lot of the monster fish, like a flagtail pracholotus and all these other grass carps, essentially, they're not that far off of koi and big goldfish. So they look cool, and I fell in love early with some big koi in someone's home aquarium. And I've always wanted to replicate that. And I just haven't yet. Mostly because I've always had puffers. And I think that's mostly my big tank always becomes a puffer tank. Even like the tank you're looking at behind me, you had clown loaches and stuff like that. But I always kind of knew at some point I'll probably put a puffer in there because I do love them. But I did some other stuff first, knowing that once you have that big pet, you can't really go backwards. You know, you can't just be like, well, let me throw that in a small tank, experiment, go back. It was kind of, once you're in on that stuff. All right. What's the smallest tank for black diamond stingrays and what dimensions? That's its own can of worms. I would say, in my opinion, this is just for me, if I was going to attempt it, it'd be a minimum of 8 foot by 4 foot. So kind of like the 800 gallon. Yeah, that's the minimum footprint I would do. That's still not big enough, but that's the minimum that I think I would find success in. I'm sure there's someone that could do it smaller. I'm sure there's people that do it larger. But a lot of times it's going to come down to, well, what can you afford to get? What can you actually source? What can you move? Like, too much bigger than the 800 gallon, you get into logistics of how do you get it into your building. It so happens that this building and the building we're moving to has garage doors to open up, and I can forklift it in. But you know, you do get to a point where you have to either start building it on site or removing windows and walls and things like that to get it in. So you know, a lot of those rays, they get really bigger than I'm willing to accommodate for, honestly. Any monster fish that you think look great from up above? Maybe more unique pond fish than koi, assuming the temperature's not an issue. Both paddlefish and sturgeon look really cool, in my opinion, because sturgeon will feed upside down, which is cool. Let's see, koi, pond, sturgeon. Let's see if I can find any pictures for you. Yeah, here's some, I suppose. So right here you've got this sturgeon, right? And there's these koi. And they're just a really cool looking prehistoric fish that, you know, keep in mind these things get like 8 feet. So, you know, when you're seeing these pictures, they don't even look that big, but trust me, they're way too big for the average person. Like you can see this one right here, right? New pond owners with a sturgeon. Like that's a huge fish, right? So they are very cool. They are unique. You know, they look kind of like sharks and stuff. They're some very cool looking fish, you know, to have that swimming around. Some other stuff you could do would be high-fin banded shark, which is actually a type of loach. I've got those in mind. So they start out looking cute and a little cuddly. Then as they grow, they kind of turn into this over here. And then you can get some that have, you know, a little bit of color on them. And they're mostly kind of an algae eater. And they go in cool water. They stay, you know, in my pond year round. But they commonly live with koi. And then I had the paddlefish. Yeah, freshwater paddlefish. Freshwater. So these things are pretty weird. I mean, they get stupid big. And I should be clear here. Just because I know a fish exists and I can show it to you does not mean I condone keeping it in our ponds or captivity or anything like that. They get, they might even be like, I'd have to research again because I can't remember. It might even be 16 feet. These things get so big it's not practical on any level pretty much. But that doesn't mean they don't get sold. I've seen them in pet stores. They were like, you know, you get a paddlefish for $500 or $800 or something. And it's crazy talk. But, you know, there's, you know, you've done it long enough. You're always looking for something new. I don't know. Are they filter feeders, or do they just eat fish that go into that gaping mouth? I don't know. But yeah, there's quite a few things you can still do besides just koi. Some sturgeon are conserved, so watch your local regulations. Yeah, I definitely couldn't know about all your different local regulations and things like that, and yeah, I've seen them for sale here. That doesn't mean they're always legal either. Sometimes you just don't know. Got 2 peacock bass that are 3 to 4 inches in a 180-gallon tank. When should I upgrade the tank? I have a mono and a zingu. So if you don't know what peacock bass are, they get fished for. Let me show you. So these big colorful fish right here, right? Something like that. That's, I mean, it's not this exact species, but you know, these big fish, they look very cool. I find them to be very combative during feeding time. I knew a lot of people, peacock bass were all the rage probably 15 years ago in home aquarium. And so you got them in 180. You're probably good for 2 or 3 years at least. But only having 2, you'll probably get one that dominates the other one and really beats up on them. Usually you see them have like this. You see how the fins are all ripped up? They really will beat on each other in an aquarium. So that's why I'm not a fan of the fish. But you can get some really cool, what is it, azul? I think I like the azul. The azuls look pretty cool. They're, you know, it was pretty much Monster Fish Keeper world. You were basically not trading, but like if you weren't dealing in peacock bass, arowanas / jardinis, stingrays, and datnoids, you didn't really have a tank. It was very popular for a while. But yeah, the peacock bass, they're, let me see if I can find a good tank. Peacock bass tank. Because, I mean, there are a million aquariums that look really nice. I can find some really nice setups that people have done. Because there are people that will build a very big setup. It looks amazing. And I've said this in the past, I'll say it again. Any fish in the right setup is the coolest setup I've ever seen. Like this one's not necessarily my favorite, but you can see these big peacock bass, this probably Endlerici bicher, right? A lot of bichers in here. It's not my favorite decoration aquarium wise, but that's a very, pretty common setup there. I just can't see any good ones right now. Yeah, you can kind of see size to human ratio. These are big fish. And big fish are very cool. So like this is what I see often. I know it's a small picture here, but this is a big Tarashukan catfish. These things get over 30 inches. They're pretty laid back and docile. Stingrays, and you got the peacock bass. In my opinion, personally, this is not a large enough aquarium for a fish this size. Like maybe it goes 4 feet back, but this thing might be, and could be optics, right? Maybe this thing's only 18 inches and it looks this big, but from what it looks like, looks to be, maybe 24 to 30 inch cat inside like a 48 inch deep tank roughly. I mean, it could go back 10 more miles. We can't see it, right? But yeah, see this kind of stuff here, not that appealing to me. You got Giardini here, peacock bass, couple of alligator gars in the bare bottom tank. Big fish, but the tank's not front to back, not long enough really, or wide enough. There's red-tailed catfish. You heard me talk about that earlier. And then here's here's a shovel nose, little stingray. You can see here it's large aquarium setup, stingrays, peacock bass, filtration on Aquarius classifieds. Kind of unfortunately a all too familiar thing when people get out of those guys. Very cool fish though. Like I said, I like when other people keep them right. It's a treat to see people keep big fish. Are just fun. I think that's the reality of it, is when someone else does something cool, it's great. What are my thoughts on Amquel? It's just a dechlorinator that'll bind up ammonia and stuff. I would say it's a fine dechlorinator. I wouldn't go out of my way to buy it though. I have to cough, so pardon me. Yeah, I saw paddlefish in a public aquarium. Super cool. They're prehistoric. They're super old school. They look like swimming dinosaurs. And I get the appeal of it, but taking care of it seems hard. What's the size of Dean's angelfish tanks? Well, it depends. There's a lot of angelfish at Dean's house, but in his display tanks, he keeps them in 55s and 75s. In the breeding tanks, mostly 40 breeders divided in half, and he raises fry in 10s and mostly 10s. Yeah. We've got a 125-gallon tank. I've currently got 2 Oscars and 2 gold Severums and a pleco. Any other uncommon fish for a tank that you would suggest? See, in my opinion, you're already like overstocked. When you see those Oscars full grown, the Severums get really crazy beefy big. Maybe not in everyone's care, but some of the sizes on those. Let me see if I can find a picture. They get. I need something for size reference of just like. I used to think they didn't get that big, and then one came into the pet store one time, which was mind-blowingly big, and then we had like a few other ones come in that were huge too. So it wasn't just like one anomaly. It was quite a few of them, but they get. Of course, I can't find a single picture that would have any kind of size reference to it other than it's in an aquarium. Well, how big is the aquarium? But I would say I feel like you're not going to gain much by adding more. That's the part of the problem, is everyone wants this like community tank of large fish, but already you start running into like there's not a whole lot of room left, even in our large aquariums that are sold commercially. So yeah, there could be things like, oh, I'm going to get a clown knife, or I'm going to add blood parrots in there, or I'm going to add, there's things you can add maybe, but the reality is if you're not going to upgrade past that 125, that tank is already like, what am I trying to say? It's like you've eaten a good meal right now, and you're like, oh, I just ate really good food. It's super good. Wow, that was a great meal. And now you're going, well, what can we get for dessert? You've got the chance of eating too much dessert, and now you feel sick. And I feel like that's where you're at with this tank, is like, you're right at that sweet spot. You know, you got the 2 Oscars, 2 gold Severums, and a Pleco, and when they all get big, that's going to be great. But you add too much more, and then you're going to go, oh, I went too far. Dang it, why do I do that every time? What can I keep with clown killifish if I want to breed them? Would shrimp be fine, or will they eat the eggs? So that's the opposite of monster fish. I find you have to keep them solo if you want to breed them. Otherwise, shrimp will eat them, yeah. Uaru are a great fish. I think they look really cool when they're young. They also look very cool when they're large. Let me show some pictures of them, because I think they look like saltwater fish. I think that's why I'm attracted to them. Like this fish right here, to me, this is a very cool looking fish. And some reason, I always think it looks like saltwater. This is what I think. Now the babies, they look like this little spotted guy here, these little spots. So they sell when they're young pretty easily. I always thought these panda Uarus looked pretty cool. I never got any, but I always thought they looked cool. But yeah, they're easy to fall in love with these little polka dot guys. But yeah, Uaru, cichlid, pretty cool big fish. I think I've kept them 2 or 3 times, and I always like kind of think they're amazing, and I don't have the patience to get them to that foot plus size, because they really, whenever I've seen them at that big size in person, they've really been something to witness. But they take a long time to get there, and for some reason, they only ever come up when I'm not ready. And I've gotten a lot better about that over the last probably, ever since I opened a store, basically. I got really good at, I'm not ready for this, I'll find it again some time down the road. And I think it's mostly, you get in that when the longer you're in a hobby, you're like, okay, I couldn't find it for a few years, then it came up, then I didn't buy it then, but then it came back 3 years later again. So you kind of figure like, oh, I will have multiple chances usually. It's not a now or never. When you're new in the hobby and you've been looking for 2 years, you've never seen it, you kind of feel like, well, I'll never see it again. And the odds are you will see it again. And hopefully you'll be ready for the next one. You know, I want to do some anableps, which are the 4-eyed livebearer. I've never been in the right mode to take some home, and they always pop up and then they're gone from the wholesaler again. So I've never had a good shot at them. Why are Geophagus not more popular? I don't 100% know that answer, other than they kind of live in this weird world where they do well with larger fish and not so much with smaller fish. Well, they do okay with smaller fish, but in general, because they dig all the time, smaller fish tanks, not tanks, but people who keep smaller fish usually want live plants. And it's not that it can't be done, but it definitely changes your selection of plants. So yeah, these are the cichlids we're talking about here. This Geophagus, and they kind of got some really nice rainbow color and that, you know. So I'm a guy that does love Geophagus. I've bred a few different ones. In fact, I don't know if I'm spoiling it, but I did put some that I was growing out into Murphy's tank. So there's actually 4 of them in there right now. They are this one, the Jurapari. Jurapari is very, very docile and laid back, so that's the reason why I chose that one. And they'll constantly churn the substrate. There's some that look way better, but some of them are pretty aggressive. And depending on the light you see this kind of like, oh, it's a little faded out. This one I think looks a little better in the color, but it's just a different picture. But yes, I think they should be more popular, but some of them can be a little ornery. And then, as you see, most of these, they're not in planted tanks. A lot of sand. They have a lot of fry. It's cool because they're a biparental mouth brooder. So that means that both male and female will hold babies in their mouth once they hatch. So that's kind of a cool thing to witness and watch. I've actually, with Hank, the previous moo puffer, we actually bred at the store Juraparis in that tank as well. So, you know, it's already been a working combo, and that's why I'm kind of bringing it back. Although I am attempting and you guys will see that in an update. I am attempting to do a fully planted tank with the Geophagus and the puffer. So I'm, ratcheting it up that level of like, let's see if I can pull this off. Here you go. Here's a Geophagus tank where a lot of the stuff is mounted to wood. That way they can still sift through the sand. Oh, Pellegrini. I like Stradici. Just because of the way they breed. When they breed with the female, the male gets this red hump, kind of like this guy, kind of. Look at this red hump. And then he opens his mouth and he just shakes back and forth at the female. And it's really fun to watch. So, and they're not that ornery. We sell them in the store. Like we usually always at our store have some form of earth eater in stock. Just because, in general we like them, but we don't keep a wide assortment or anything like that. They're hard to find the right home. It's a fish that's gonna get 6 to 10 inches, and then dig up your plants and those types of things. All right, perfect. Well, that's the first hour on monster fish. So I'm gonna chime in on any question at this point. Please talk me into or out of a canister filter. I've been in the hobby for 30 years and I've never had one. That's easy. You made it 30 years without needing one. You probably don't need one. Very few tanks would I ever say need a canister filter. There are specific instances. Just think of it this way with filtration. It's all about how much surface area, whether it's sponge filter, hang on back, canister, underground filter, doesn't matter. Sump versus how much waste are you making. And, people a lot of times, one of the common setups is fully planted tank and canister filter. Well, if your tank's fully planted, you don't even need filtration really. You need something to move some water around, but reality is you probably don't even need filtration. That being said, you've been in the hobby for 30 years, and sometimes you just need something new. And that might be the thing. Like, I want to play with this, and you might love it, you might not. I'm past it. I've tried them all, used them all. I'm still currently using one, I think, on Ladybird's tank. Mostly it's because it's a custom carved stand and I can't put a sump. And then because it's acrylic tank, it doesn't have any cutouts for hang-on-back, so I can't do that either. If I had other options, I do have a sponge filter, one sponge filter in there. If I had other options, I would use them. Have I ever kept Dovii? I have kept Dovii. If you look through the old videos, we were growing one out for a while. Can you keep Geophagus and Severums in a 180, which is a 6x2x2? You can, yes. Very common to mix Geophagus with Severums and silver dollars and a lot of those types of fish. Can you explain deworming a wild-caught puffer with paracleanse? I actually just filmed a video about that before I went live today, but basically you want to put them through a treatment, a 1-week treatment, follow directions. Then treat them with nothing for 2 weeks. Then treat them again with paracleanse. And then nothing for 2 weeks. And then again with paracleanse. Now, if you want to take it the extra step, you'd wait maybe a month after that. Then do levamisole. And hopefully all the feces would be coming out kind of clean. And you'd know you'd got it right. For a dirted tank, the soil I bought has bat guano and earthworm castings. Would you expect it to have ammonia problems? I think the earthworm castings are very rich, I think, from what I've read. But in general, any soil tank I expect to have ammonia problems. Like you're putting a bunch of material in there to rot, which ends up being a very good fuel source for aquarium plants, but also a very good fuel source for ammonia. I went through that whole dirted tank phase when I was newer to the hobby, and what I honestly found to work the absolute best for me was a 1/4 inch of dirt. So a tiny little bit across the bottom, and then like 1 3/4 inches of other substrate. Once the tap roots got down, they would feed and plants would grow really well. When you go to remove that plant, very minimal dirt would ever get out. And I wouldn't have so much dirt in there where I would get gas pockets. I wouldn't get ammonia buildup and that kind of stuff. I find that a lot of times, like, well, dirt's so cheap. Why not put more? More food, more better. And in my experience, it was kind of the opposite. Like I get all the same benefits for a little bit of dirt, and then I don't have kind of the dirt problems that come with it. So I would err on the side of less dirt works better for myself, and maybe you too. I realized I had missed super chats and stuff like that, so I'm gonna grab some of those. So Danny asks, would RGB, so red, green, blue, clear tape over LEDs work to make the LED full spectrum? I feel like that's a no, and so let me just say why. If that worked, there would be no need for other types of LEDs. Like everyone would just do that, right? So every aquarium light would just be like, oh, put in the film you want to achieve the look you want. I think it might give you a color cast that would look like that, but I don't know that it would actually put the same wavelengths out. Now, that goes to another NERM level than I know of lighting, and I know a decent amount about lighting, but I don't know that specific thing. I feel like what films typically do is they filter out different light spectrums, and so you might get the output color, the one you want, but not necessarily, what is it, nanometers when you're measuring it? I can't remember the wavelength, basically the CRI, that kind of stuff. So I feel like it can't be that easy. I've been wrong before, though, in which case, why don't we all buy this tape? Also, I've never seen that tape before, so maybe it's a new thing. A pair of Betta hendra. What's the minimum tank size? I've never heard of Betta hendra before, so I'm going to Google it, see if I know it. Yeah, they look amazing. But I've never kept them, so I mean, I can give you generalities like, yeah, it looks like you could pull that off in a 10-gallon, no problem. Like, I think I could do that. That being said, without ever keeping a fish like that, you're susceptible to like, oh no, they kill each other. Oh, they do this, they do that, which I haven't kept, so I don't know. But in the interest of trying to give you a little bit of, other wild bettas that are of that body shape and seem like size, 10-gallon and up seems to be no problem. A 20 long, even easier. How big would you say is too big to ethically keep? I don't think there's anything technically too big. Now, some people might say, like, what about whales? What about the paddlefish? What about... So, I think technically anything can be done. Now, whether a company or an owner is going to do it, that remains to be seen. So imagine you say like, well, no one can accommodate a 16-foot paddlefish. I don't know, billionaires could. They probably will never care enough to want to do that, but they could. So I think it's more of like, I think it's a personal decision, and you can only know what you'll be able to take care of. I mean, there's obvious ones where it's like a 5-gallon aquarium for a paddlefish is not going to work, right? But I think in general, like if there was some big fish, I don't know what it is because I probably wouldn't keep it. But let's say we were trying to keep something like a sturgeon in an aquarium or an arapaima, right? The odds at which the 1,500 people that are in chat right now can keep an aquarium large enough to house that are pretty low. That being said, I own an aquarium store and I might have some connections, like maybe I could pull it off. So my odds become better, but still probably not great. Like it's a stupid large aquarium to pull that off. And whether I would want to, and the answer is no. I don't think that fish is cool enough to pull it off. But when I see some of the larger aquarium exhibits, do I think it's pretty cool? Yeah. And do I think it's ethical? Yes. But I'll be honest, and even most of the like zoo/aquarium setups for arapaima, I think are not big enough. Now, that's just my perception. I go, oh man, it looks pretty tight in there for that thing. That being said, maybe if I kept that fish in my own care for many years, I'd be like, oh, it doesn't even want to move around. I feel safer. I didn't know it was a cave dweller. Like, there's still always so much to learn. And when we're judging someone else's choices, we better really make sure we have a lot of knowledge on the subject, because otherwise we're just putting our own bias on, I don't think that's right. I don't know it, but I don't think that's right. And I realize I basically put on a 2-hour show every week about putting my bias out there. I totally get that aspect too. It's not lost on me that that's basically all I do. But I try to keep an open mind, and I know that it's all an odds thing. So, yep, odds are low, but, and, you could sway me into like, well, maybe we should have a process to get that. Sure, maybe you got to prove you have a 20,000 gallon tank before you can buy a paddlefish, or whatever, scheme we come up with. Whenever you discuss filtration, you discuss lots about surface area. How much does flow rate come into play? How do you determine the appropriate gallons per hour? Essentially, flow doesn't matter. The internet is now on fire, so just know that. But if you look at maybe the Texas Research Center, Stock Center, and they've got a handful of gravel and an air stone, that keeps the fish alive. If you look at some of the big, maybe guppy farms, or pick another farm, and they have the filtration, water turns over once every 4 hours, and that's enough. The reality is you only need to turn water over enough so that bacteria can touch the ammonia, essentially. And like in a farm situation where there's 20,000 fish in, 500 gallons of water, and they turn it over once every 4 hours, that's enough. In our home aquarium, where it's like, oh, I have 200 fish in 200 gallons, you might only have to turn the water over once every 5 days to pull that off. So I actually believe that it's kind of a non-issue in home aquarium. There's always going to be outliers to that. I realize that. But in general, you need some kind of movement, which fish provide some. I want to move nutrients to plants around a little bit. So you need some kind of current in there. It doesn't have to be a whole lot, but something so it's not just completely stagnant, I find. An air stone, something. And then after that, usually, from everything I've seen, substrate, glass walls, decoration, enough bacteria colonizes there that it will keep something alive. Now, that's a lot different than maybe keeping it alive the way you want to. So, for instance, you could probably buy the most rundown car you can get on Craigslist or something, and it will technically get you from point A to B, and it's embarrassing. You have to fix it every other week. It gets horrible gas mileage, all the things that could be wrong, right? But technically it works. And that might be what an aquarium with almost no filtration and just some water movement is. And then there's well, I like a nice 2000 Toyota Camry. It's reliable and it gets me to where I want to go. It's not the best, but it's not the worst. And maybe that's what we shoot for. And then you've got people I need a Ferrari. I gotta have 6 Ferraris on this African cichlid tank, right? So I think, what will technically work and what we as humans typically do are two different things. I think in general, we shoot for that mid to high, when that low end will work just fine. And we can see this in, different parts of the world where, some, is it Cuba? Where cars have basically not come in and they've repaired them and they've run forever. It's that 1960s car still running today. Fix it. And then, we can do that in America, but typically it's oh, well, now it's a classic car and it's this and that. And we would never consider we can't be driving that to work every day. That's crazy talk, right? But you're bound by the limits. And so if you can expand the limit of well, do I have to have a lot of water movement? Do I have to have this? When you can remove those parameters, you go, okay, well, I can play the game in a different way. And I might learn something and that's where, I'm not doing water changes. I use very little filtration. And it's not that there aren't tanks at which I wouldn't use that. It's that I'm playing the game slightly different than I used to play the game. And when I first started playing the game, I was scared, so I bought tons and tons of filtration, and I adhered to at least 10 times turnover. I got a 180-gallon tank, so therefore I need 1,800 gallons of turnover and blah, blah, blah. And then you learn over time that well, I only had half as much. That worked fine. Then I only had a fourth as much. That still worked fine. That's weird. and you figure it out. All right. Love being a member. By the way, become a member if you haven't already. We're trying to hit in 2,000. We're over 100 away, so don't know if we'll hit it by 2021. But if you did, I'd like it. No worries if you don't answer this. Some of your favorite non-livebearer fish that you can breed passively in a single species community. Like Norman Lamp-Eyes killie, clown killifish, emperor tetras, white clouds, rice fish, Rabensis, apistos, Juraparis, a lot of African cichlids. If you set up enough rock work, you could colony breed a lot of African cichlids too. Probably more, but that's at least one for every $1. Why not? Is ICX good for Dojo loaches? I just got 2 of them and I'm quarantining them for 4 to 8 weeks. I'm scared to use ICX in case... Wait, I'm scared to use ICX in case it develops. We use it on every Dojo loach that ever comes into our possession. We seem to have it work okay. You're right to be worried, but if they have ick, you're gonna have to treat it with something. We would use ICX to do that ourselves. Like with that fish, I would use ICX before I'd use salt. So maybe that'll give you some comfort. My biggest tank is 125 gallon. Is it wise to get clown loaches? Is it irresponsible since I can't provide them forever home beyond that tank size? Maybe. It gets hard. So a 125, like this chunky monkey down here, that guy was almost a foot. Well, maybe he was like 14 inches. He was big. Anyway, technically a 125, you could still keep it there. Now, is it better if it was in a larger tank? Sure. What the good news is everyone loves clown loaches, and typically it is easy to move them on to a bigger home pretty easily. Not always. And they also grow pretty slow. Like they get to about 6 inches pretty quick, and then after that, it's like every year is maybe ½ an inch to an inch. You can game the system a little bit there, but I feel like that's one of those ones where it's like, yeah, if you got like 6 to 8 of them or something, nothing too crazy, you'd keep them for a very long time. And the reality is you'll probably lose them to, a real bad snowstorm, power outage, something like that before you get into like that old age syndrome. You're lucky if you're like, oh, I'm 28 years, things are getting too big. Usually it's like an accident happened and then they got sick and it was hard to treat them. That's usually the culprit, unfortunately. Thank you to all the new members, by the way, and the super chats. Tips for getting rid of snails in my bristlenose breeding tank. I would probably rent a puffer. What I mean by that is just rent yourself like a pea puffer, borrow it from a friend or buy one from the store and then return it when you're snail free. Otherwise, you could build yourself a snail trap, although if you have any fry in there, that's going to get in there, and you might find your pea puffer going after your small fry, so there's that too, but it can be hard to separate between the two. Did I hit my goal? Where's my subscriber hat? It's just in the house. My subscriber hat of shame. In fact, it's not working at all. For all the stuff I've been trying where it's like, hey, you guys should subscribe. We put it in the videos, we've done everything. Hasn't gone up at all. Like it just keeps going up at 12,000 a month no matter what we do. So it's kind of demoralizing, honestly. It either means they're like, people don't like us that much, or there's just nothing you can do. Either way, it's like, oh, okay. Do anyone know what size pump is needed for a stream? For a stream that's about 6 inches deep and 10 inches wide. Stream, like maybe like between 2 ponds? If it's between like 2 ponds, you're gonna have to look into what's the height difference, right? So if there's a big height difference, you're gonna look at the curve on the pump and go, how many gallons per hour do I want to move it? Oh, I gotta raise it 6 feet. If it's just a flat thing, it doesn't take much. You could probably go with like 50 gallons per hour and it would be moving pretty good. So if there's no difference in heights. Finally got a local fish store about a month Hold on. Finally got a local fish store about a month in the business. What suggestions would you have for me? Just a hobbyist to help them and keep them around. I really, really want to see them succeed. It's really difficult to help. What I mean by that is you could shower them with help. Like, oh, I'm going to advertise for them on Craigslist. I'm going to put out the good word. I'm going to leave them good reviews. I'm going to do all that stuff. And if they are doing some stuff that shoot them in the foot, it won't help. Like, I know there's competitors and other stores here that are closed every Sunday and Monday. And to me, almost no amount of good things you could do for them is going to help them. It's like you're closed on Sunday. That's the second most profitable day of the week for your business. Like that, the third most profitable day is Monday. So you're closed 2 out of 3 most profitable days in the week. Almost, you'd have to talk them out of that. But the things that I think you can practically do, you could post on Craigslist. That's stuff that a lot of times maybe a store owner will do for a couple weeks and they get lazy or they forget. Could post, and get some people going that way. Leaving reviews, and this is all stuff you could do for us too. If you leave a review on Google, on their Facebook page, on Yelp, all of those things, and then doing it again later. So what I mean by that is, like, right now you're like, yeah, I'm gonna go do all those things, but maybe next month they post something on their Facebook page and you chime in and you just go like, yeah, I did get great fish last week, or when I was there, I saw these, they looked amazing. Like, just some kind of positive comment to help engage other people in conversation that will slowly help their business. And most of when you're wanting to help a local store like that, it's long-term help passively when they need it. A lot of times it's like, oh, new store, super energetic, I'm all over it. And then, 8 months later, it's like, well, I tried, didn't work, I'm busy, so those small things long-term help a lot. Could just be you breeding a little bit of fish. Could just be you throwing that comment every once in a while, leaving a review, updating your review, that kind of stuff. Reminding them like, hey, Corey, don't forget, Christmas Eve and Christmas, have you updated your Yelp and your Google hours yet for the retail store? Like, oh, I hadn't yet. I'm going to do that tonight. Helping with those types of little things can help. But it does boil down to some of their own work ethic, some luck, some outside factors. Are fish coming in? Did they come in sick? There's all that kind of stuff too. But as far as what you can do is just be that supporting thing there, and don't lie. If you didn't see anything good or your fish are dying that you buy from them, like, it doesn't do you any good to lie. But hopefully that's not what's going on, because that's why you want to support them. Is there a good local fish store? Where's the best place to buy bigger tanks online? I don't know. So what am I trying to say? Everywhere online seems to be pretty expensive. So, you could go to like glasscages.com, customaquariums.com, you can, any of those. But I find it to be pretty expensive compared to a local builder or a local store that brings in big tanks. So maybe they order a semi-truck full from Tenacor and they bring in some big tanks. You might have to wait 6 months. I don't know exactly. But, like, we have local builders that we can go to and they're expensive. I don't know what the best place is because I've never ordered one online. So I don't know, like, oh, this one's got the best reputation. This one's got the best this or that. Yeah. And I don't know if any are really better than the other. I would say this. If you're buying big tanks, I'll only buy acrylic. So that's why I've never bought anything from like Custom Aquarium. Glass Cages, for some reason I've never ordered from them, but I only want acrylic. Big tanks, acrylics are lighter to move, easier to move, and less likely to leak or break. 80 degree tank with rabbit snails, that'll work, Marion. I just watched a video with the Rainbow Fish Guru, so inspiring. So if you're talking about Gary Lang, someone in the chat earlier was saying he was speaking at one of the clubs. Was it Mazzy? I mean, that's his club. I don't know. I don't know if there's any way for the normal public to get in or if that's a member-only thing. So you might look for that. Any stocking suggestions for a 55-gallon Congo biotope? I'd go with Congo Tetras because they're rad. After that, I don't know. I just know that. Biotopes I'm not super into. I mean, I like looking at them, but I couldn't recite, like, oh, here's what you're going to do in this Congo biotope. I'm not that good. I have a 29-gallon tank. I added false Julicories. They're constantly zipping around. Is that normal? They've only been there for 3 days? Yeah, it's probably normal. Pretty much, if you only add a fish for a short while and it's doing anything, is that normal? Yeah, probably. It's kind of like, my cat's running all around. Yeah, cats do that sometimes. My cat's sleeping. Yeah, they do that sometimes. And then you add I've only had it for 3 days. Yeah, after you have it for a while, you'll know if that's normal or not. But yeah, I mean, you could have lots of current. Now they're fighting the current. It could be that they're just so well fed, they're trying to breed. Could be, there's all these things that could be triggering different behaviors. So you kind of have to see what's normal to know what's abnormal with your specific fish in your tank. Why is my clown loach skinny? Could have internal tapeworms or parasites. That's usually the common cause. Could be being out-competed for food. I would definitely deworm it and load it up on food. Maybe get yourself some Vitachem to soak the food, get some extra vitamins going into it, and hope for the best. Ooh, Mr. Ed with $5. Thank you. All right, we can get back to more questions. Second, the sump on the 800 gallon. How's that working? It's working pretty good. I'm not sure if I'm going to put the sump back in when we move it. Because I like it to run quiet, and it's running pretty quiet right now. Like, you guys probably can't hear the sump, but I'm considering kind of setting it up back the way I had it with like just a canister filter, which the canister filter is kind of loud too. If you can believe that, I've gotten this room so quiet with all the sound paneling that even like a Fluval FX6, you can hear it. Like, what is that sound? Like, dang, that filter. And it's a quiet filter, but yeah, I'm trying to keep it very quiet, low-key, easy maintenance, and the sump does that too for the most part, but like this pump I have right now, it's gotten louder over time, so we're probably, 8 months into it, and it's like, ooh, yeah, you're getting a little more rattly and louder, even though I look at the impeller, it's fine. I think it's just the way those pumps work, like they just get a little bit louder, so. How about 10 guppies and a Betta and a 20? Would that work? Anything can work, but that's not going to work. Now, it could work, but in general, they want different water parameters. Also, if any of the guppies are the same color as the Betta, he might attack them. But it could be done. It's just not an easy setup. It's like, why are you trying to make peanut butter jelly and mayonnaise taste good when you could just do peanut butter and jelly? Kind of one of those, like, hey, what could I add to peanut butter and jelly to make it taste good? Like, no, not mustard. No, maybe bananas, but what kind of jelly? It's kind of one of those situations. Uh-oh. Melinda says, what should I do about my water testing for ammonia? Oh, ammonium, not ammonia. Fish are not showing any signs, but nothing I do will get rid of ammonium. I'm a newbie and I love your videos. So typically, ammonium only happens when your pH is 6.4 or lower. Now, there might be something going on with your test kit or something like that, so I can't know the whole story here, but in that case, when it's below 6.4, it is technically non-toxic to fish. Now, if your pH was to go up, it would become toxic. Being that you are a newbie, how long has your tank been going? It could be you just have a low pH, your tank cycled, but it wasn't like cycled enough for the amount of fish you have, or it could be you're putting in like a fertilizer that has ammonia in it. Some do, ours doesn't, but some do, in which case you'd be dosing ammonia, which converts to ammonium. Could be that. But in general, probably what you would do if you have any live plants or anything like that is just do nothing, and over time that aquarium is going to learn how to handle that. The one thing you would make sure is just make sure you're not going to raise your pH up out of the 6.4, because that will then turn back to toxic, and that could be very detrimental. So this is you got to be real careful here. You could be in this situation where by doing a water change, if it raises the pH, it could actually make the water parameters worse. So you might want to test your tap water, see if that's got anything going on in it, see what the pH is. Whenever you test tap water, by the way, always put an air stone in it, let it sit 24 hours and see if it changes. That way you'll know what it's actually going to look like in your aquarium after some time. So if they're putting in any CO2 or anything to alter the pH before it goes through the pipes and stuff in your house, it'll affect your results. Uh-oh. Let's set the internet on fire. I feel that you can have multiple male bettas in a heavily planted tank that is large enough to home them. What are your thoughts? Of course. Like, I don't know how many times I can say anything can be done. You know, a lot of times I just rearrange the words people use, and that explains it to them. So it says, I feel that you can have multiple male bettas in a heavily planted tank that's large enough to home them. What if I said, I feel like you can have multiple male bettas in a rice paddy that's large enough they don't see each other? Your answer is like, well, of course, that's what they do. And of course, that would be my thing of like, well, yes, if you have an 800-gallon tank with like 10 male bettas and it's fully planted, it's going to be okay. It's all the other extremes. So like, while that would be an extreme, it's the, what about 3 male bettas in a 10-gallon? Like, well, the odds are much worse there than they are with 10 and 800 gallons. Like, so if each betta gets 80 gallons to itself versus each betta gets 3 gallons to itself. So 2 opposite extremes. And then it gets harder as you get closer to middle. Like, well, what about 10 of them 55 gallons? Like, well, maybe, it's like, well, maybe maybe. That's where it starts getting harder. But yes, anything can be done. I've seen way too much stuff that is impossible. I want to push the limit. I want to walk on the Rager's edge. That's every new aquarist. How much more can I put in this water bottle? What more? That's a lot of time you spend just going, well, how about we buy another water bottle? How about we do something else here? Can you explain the gravid spot people speak of? I have been breeding my guppies for a while, and the females have that dark section at the back of... I can't say that word. Peritonal? A gravid spot just means something is pregnant, and on a guppy, that's the black spot. As it kind of gets more black and bigger, that's more pregnant. Now, also guppies will also tend to box out. What does that mean? That means that, I'm trying not to show products we're going to launch. I was like going to grab that. I'm like, wait, people don't know about that yet. Wait, no, people don't know about that yet either. Basically, they might be round, right? So they're round, and they're filled with babies, and as those babies grow inside of them, it kind of squares off because they're running out of space, so it just kind of like keeps going like this until they kind of are more boxy. And that gravid spot on the back is just how we explain it. That gravid black spot on the back compared to it'd be near kind of the anus. The males don't get that. Yeah, and somehow it's only really prevalent in, let me think if that's going to be a true statement. It's really only prevalent in like guppies that I find. Guppies, endlers, that kind of stuff, like Posilia. I don't really see, well, no, I will see it a little bit in swordtails and platies, but not nearly as much as guppies. Guppies are a little more, I find their bodies to be a little more translucent and show it a little more. How soon can you breed guppies after they're born? Loose tangible would be like 3 months, although typically, or not typically, they can technically start growing like a gonopodium, like I think it's like week 3 or something. So usually you want to separate them before that if you're really trying to line breed. Why do sturgeons have a low chance of survival when you bring them home from the store? Mostly because we bring them from, well, we're bringing them into a warm water environment. They like being much cooler. They typically don't get quite enough food. They're kept in too small of aquariums. They constantly need to be swimming. And they're usually raised as like a farm fish, not so much as an aquarium fish. So Kind of the same reason why you'd see like wire feeder goldfish. Why do they not last as long as a normal goldfish? Like, well, they're kind of raised for a different purpose, and they're not managed in the same way. I have a 1-month-old guppy that is yellow, but it's also see-through still, so it should be interesting as it ages. A lot can happen with the guppy. It's fun. Got 5 aquariums, the biggest being a 55. I want a cool, big pet fish. I'm willing to get a larger aquarium. Any suggestions? Nope. It's too open-ended. Like, you shouldn't look for someone else. Like, it's kind of like saying, I want to get a dog. And then you go to someone in your house, you're like, what dog should I get? Their opinion is going to be based on what they like, which... You know, maybe replace that with, I am hungry. I want to eat dinner. What should I eat for dinner? Like, you know what you like. You could Google dogs or food all day long and you go, ooh, that one looks super cool. I want to research and learn about that. That's the one for me. That's what you should do with fish too. Don't let Corey tell you that pufferfish are super cool because maybe you love cichlids, or maybe you love arowanas, or maybe you love something else. You should do it based on what do you fall in love with instead of, you know, why do you want a big pet fish? What is it about it? Did you see one time that was super cool? Maybe you need that one. Why does it need to be big? Is there a behavior you're looking for? Why do you want it to be big? Big is just harder. So, you know, think about it like with dogs for me. Big dogs, there's some advantage to some big dogs, but I get a lot of use out of my small dogs, right? Like, oh, they don't go to the bathroom that much. They eat a little bit, like sassy. You know, will bite your head off just like a pit bull would. You know, she's little and lovable. And then there are, you know, like, why would you want a big dog? Okay, I can give you the reasons why I'd want a big dog. At the new place, we've got predatory birds. And my dog that weighs 3 pounds could be swept off with a bird. And yes, we're putting in bird netting over the dog run, so hopefully that wouldn't happen. But let's say Katie and I, or Dorkula and I, are just walking around with our little doggies, and maybe want a bigger dog to give them more of a presence to ward off some of those predators. Maybe I want, like I went camping. Check out the link at the top if you haven't, by the way. I went camping a couple weeks ago. Maybe I want a dog to help keep me warm when it's snowing out and we're camping. Bigger dog would help do that, right? Maybe I want a dog that'll fetch. Currently, none of my dogs will fetch. And so maybe, like, if I got a lab, they're more prone to fetching. So find something that you are looking for and then research the fish or the animal that's going to help you achieve that, instead of, you know, if I ask Steenfot Aquatics, well, what dog should I get? It's going to be, you know, like, what is it? Cane Corso, all these, like, giant dogs that he loves. Don't get me wrong. I like petting the giant dogs he's got, but that's not the right dog for me. And the same thing would be here, is like, just whatever I suggest, it wouldn't necessarily be the right fish for you. You got to find what do you want to clean up after? When it goes to the bathroom, what do you want to clean up? When you got to feed it, what do you want to take care of? What is going to bring so much joy to you that it's worth the downsides you're trading for it? How many triple red cockatoos, which are an apisto, and a 40 breeder? I would do just like a boy and 2 girls. Having problems with shrimp and snails, bleaching in color and then dying. The pH is 8.2. Too high or a mineral thing? Sounds like a mineral thing. Your pH should be fine, so it shouldn't be dissolving their shells unless there's no calcium left in the water, in which case then it would dissolve slowly. I would go about it treating it with either wonder shells or more, I would probably do like banquet blocks, the Zoomed Nano banquet blocks with spirulina in them. If you were to build a tank around peacock gudgeons, Stiffodon gobies, and hillstream loaches, which would you choose and why? I like hillstream loaches just because they eat algae and they look super cool, like face suckers. Stiffodon gobies are cool, but they're a little bit finicky. And peacock gudgeons look cool. They're fun to breed. I mean, I could probably do all of those in the same tank if I was trying. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard for me to answer this question. I've done nearly everything. When you combine, like, working at a pet store for 5 years, having a home fish room and 50 aquariums, and then owning a pet store, and then having your own fish room, Like, there's so many stuff I've already done. It's like, well, what would you do? It's like, well, I already kind of did it. I bred it, I guess, but that's not what I'd recommend for you, because that's like, if you want to breed the peacock gudgeons, you get 1/2-inch PVC pipe, and it looks stupid, but you can breed them. But you can do it in a fully planted tank. It's a whole different look, much more enjoyable, gorgeous fish. But in general, I like to breed a fish. I guess I'm just attracted to the way that success. So what I'm trying to say is, when I breed a fish, that's my level of success that I'm trying to achieve. When it's just keeping it alive in an aquarium, it's like, if I just keeping it alive, I can do that at the store. Like, I got to do something beyond that. And for me, usually that's breeding it at home so that I can go, hey, I took the babies in the store, then I sold them. And it's not even about the money. It's just to be like, yeah, I learned something about what they do and how to do it, and that's cool. And now I can maybe apply that to the next thing. Like, I've never bred stiffidung gobies, which I don't think they're very easy to do, but you know, if I was ever to try and keep them at home, I'd always be going, I wonder what I got to do to get those to breed. That would be my overall goal. HC Aquas, all those in the same tank sounds good. Yeah, that's what I think. You know, at least a 20 long. I'd probably do a 29. I have a 20 high with a pair of angels, and they started laying some eggs. I don't want any eggs. What should I do? Probably just do nothing. They'll probably just eat them. The other thing you could do if you really want to make sure they eat them is add in some snails. Like, they'll probably get them. Uh-oh. The one thing I asked Corey, please do not light anything on fire when you're camping. The one thing. Just because I melted my shoe. Which, by the way, it melted all the glue. So I looked down and my shoe was smoking. And I was like, oh man, am I on fire? And it turns out, like, my glue that held the bottom of my shoe, like the tread or whatever to the shoe, was all melty. And so then I was able to, like, put my foot down on the ground and hold it there, and it glue cooled down and melted back together. So as far as I'm concerned, good as new. I've been thinking of building a salt tank, mostly because the species are more colorful, but it seems like a lot of work. Do I have the correct impression? I don't think. I'm not sure that saltwater is that much more work. It's different. You got to mix salt. That's more work than taking it out of the tap. That's true. But if you set up the tank right, with like a protein skimmer, you're rinsing the food and using high quality foods, the amount of water changes you do shouldn't be that big. And you could even, with the right macroalgae, you could achieve a balance. So, what am I trying to say? If you got a specific fish you love, I think you could do it without a ton of work. Now, if you're like, I want the best reef, I want stony corals, I want all the things, usually that is a path of a lot of work. Like, oh, now I'm buying all the gadgets, I'm doing all the things, I'm dosing all the stuff, trace element today, that tomorrow, this next week. That becomes a lot of work. But you can do that same thing in freshwater of like, I'm making this way too hard on myself. I'm a glutton for punishment. But there are some ways to make it pretty low key. And so I wouldn't swear off saltwater just because I hear it's hard. I would more go, how do I research this and to make this into the least amount of work? So like when I did saltwater, I used a protein skimmer. I also grew mangroves out of the back so it would absorb nitrates. I rinsed the food before I put it in. I fed very little. I kept, what did I keep for fish? I inherited them because I like the story, like with those, I inherited them because of the way that I was doing a maintenance business and the persons who they were passed away of cancer. And then they were like, come get them. And I was like, oh, I guess I'm taking saltwater tanks. And it was a clownfish. I'm trying to remember like what kind of goby it had. I don't remember what type of goby. And then some like little starfish and hermit crabs and that kind of stuff. But it was pretty sustainable. That being said, that particular tank, at one point, like 6 months later, it died. And I realize that makes me sound terrible. But what I'm saying is, you test the water, you're doing all your stuff, the corals are doing fine. Like, oh man, look, my anemone's getting bigger. Oh, look at that. My canyon trees are going wild. I'm getting lots of new growth on the mangrove, blah, blah, blah. Like, everything seemingly is going great. But then, like, we were looking at the tank. It was doing fine. Wake up the next morning, it was just like nothing but milky water. And I never found out, did the anemone crawl into one of the circulation pumps or what happened, but it ammonia spiked, everything basically died out in there. Not everything, I salvaged some stuff, but it was bad. Had to do a massive water change, and so I don't know that, you know, the only sign that I had was the anemone was moving around, which is usually a sign they're not happy. And so either it died or it moved into an impeller and got chopped up, and that was enough to start kind of a domino effect. So, but I've run other tanks that have been successful at, you know, at stores I had to manage and client tanks and all of that. It just happened to be that one was the only one. That's actually the only saltwater tank I've ever witnessed like fail was my own. Awesome. Uh-oh. Tell us the truth about the camping trip. Bob really snuck in to sleep with your car because it's too cold. No, Bob is the guy that will swear everything is easy and prove you wrong, and then would dang near sneak into my car to sleep, but instead he grabbed a sleeping bag that was, Jimmy brought an extra sleeping bag because he's awesome. And even when we had that, Bob was like, no, I'm not gonna use it. I'm gonna see how long I can go without it. And I was like, why would you do that? It's gonna be horrible. And then of course it was horrible and he got cold and put it back on. Like, I'm not out there to prove anything. Like, nope. I want every creature comfort I can get when it comes to camping. I mean, the joke I made was like, okay, now they're here at the campsite, I'm going to the hotel. Like, I like my comforts. That's why I've got all those, like, you know, I was wearing like a blanket and just anything I can do to keep myself warm and sit by a fire and relax. That's all I want to do. Where Jimmy's in his element filming, Bob's making jokes and cooking. I'm just sitting there. I'll eat what they cook, watch the fire. Indoor ponds, what are your tips and tricks? First and foremost, get a dehumidifier. If you're going to put a big body of water in your house, you're going to need to take that humidity out of there. That's the first thing I would do. It'll heat it up for you and keep your air a lot drier. And drier air is easier to heat. So it's a win-win and you won't grow mold. After that, I don't know, there's a whole lot of tips really. It's like build a giant pond, enjoy. Yeah, there's so many ways to do it. Whether you're I'm gonna build it, I'm gonna set up a swimming pool, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna buy little ponds like I'm doing, you know. But yes, humidity, because ponds usually have disproportionate large surface area that leads to a lot of humidity. That's what I would do. Will pea puffers eat shrimp? Most often the answer is yes. I've had some that have been unruly and not do it. You know, we had some that were trolling us in the store for quite a while where they'd let some shrimp live in with them. But for the most part, people run into the problem of, yep, they're eating my shrimp. No, it says Corey. Any bottom cleanup snail for leftover food? Yeah, I'd say all of them. Malaysian trumpet snails, ram's horn snails. Those are my favorites. Pond snails are my favorite, like those pest snails. After that, probably Malaysian and ram's horn. All of them will do you good. Do I have any substrate in my ponds? I have a little bit of crushed coral. Not even enough to cover the whole bottom. Mostly just to help buffer up the water. So at the new place, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I'm tempted to do some thick substrate and plant crypts because I really like the way it looks. But I don't know if I have those kind of patience. So we'll see. We'll see what I end up doing going forward. Have I ever dealt with black spot tubularian worms? No. I like that name though, tubularian. Tubularian. I do want to try, so I think Bob's going to bring his new dog camping. And at some point I do want to try to take Tinky camping with me because he's real inquisitive, real smart. And, but, you know, I don't want to take a tiny dog into the snow because, one, the snow could be taller than her. Two, tiny dogs lose heat really fast. So I'll wait for, like the adventure we went on would have been a perfect time to try out a dog. But it was my first time camping with these dudes, and you don't know how crazy they get after they've knocked back 3 or 4 root beers. Whew, getting crazy. Can't find many videos on how to care for pearl killifish. That's because there's probably none that exist. Killifish in general, outside of the popular ones, are kind of a niche thing at best. I would go to aka.org, American Killifish Association, and look up and see if they have a profile on it. I know what that fish looks like, but without Googling it, I can't tell you 100% like, oh yeah, it's a peat spawner or not. And I haven't bred it myself, so it would just be guesstimation advice, which I hate doing because I have the most chance of looking dumb when it's like, oh, I haven't experienced that. Let me look dumb by explaining what I think it would be like, instead of, oh, here's my experience with all of that. So I don't want to do you wrong. Go look it up, I would say. Well, let me see if it's aka.org. I want to send you the wrong place too. Let's see. It is aka.org. That's the NERM level I am right there. aka.org. Even talking about the 2021 annual convention. Where's it going to be? It's planned June 11th to the 13th. I guess more information. We don't know where yet. I would think it'd be sooner, though. You can register for it on December 31st. Why would you register if you don't know where you're going? That's a little suspect. But the AKA, it's pretty cheap, actually. Yeah. Now I'm going to look at killifish all day long. Ooh. There we go. I want to get into that deep mud looking for killies. That looks like a fun time. I say that now, but when you actually step into that mud, it's the worst time of your life. Plus, when we were searching for killies in Peru, is so unrewarding. You'd have to like just keep going back and forth in super black tannin water that you couldn't see anything, and you might get something that resembles a killifish. Nothing super gorgeous like these that we were finding. Have I and Dean had a chance to play with the muck buckets yet? I want to know if plumbing a canister is difficult to use for indoor use. Muck bucket? I'm trying to digest. Have you indeed had a chance to play with the muck buckets yet? I mean, I looked it up. Yeah, I've been using these things for 10 plus years straight. Wanting to know if plumbing your canister filter is difficult for indoor use. I see what you're trying to do. It shouldn't be that hard to do with like some uniseals, which I hate uniseals, by the way, but you could probably force a muck bucket. Let me make sure everyone's on the same page. If I had to Google it, maybe some other people did, or maybe everyone knows. But something like this right here. You could probably force it flat with a bulkhead and just plumb it in through both with bulkheads, both sides. I bet you that would work. I mean, I saw Dean do some stuff, and I need to make that whole video. Yeah, we gotta go back and film. But he's coming up to my house to film this week, so too much stuff to film, not enough time. That's what I know. But no, haven't done any canister filters, but it should be doable. Not impossible. But I would say why. Why again? And you could just run them over the top too. You wouldn't have to run them through it. So yeah. Is Dean from Peru? Nope. Dean, as far as I know, has been here. I think he was born in the Northwest here. I think. Why not a 5-gallon bucket? I don't know. Why not? No one's sure about Dean's true origins. That's pretty much true. My mind was blown when I learned his name was Andrew like a year or two ago. I was like, what? Their name was Dean. It's crazy. Is Flourish Seachem good for plants? How do I answer this? I think it's impossible to answer this, not being biased. Let me say this. Officially, it can grow plants. That's a true statement. There are, in my opinion, many, many, many other fertilizers on the market that would be better for your money and probably easier to use than Flourish, Seachem. But some places that's all you got, right? So if you're in a country that's all you got, it will technically work. That being said, it's pretty watered down, for lack of a better term. So you might have to do a lot of fertilizing there. My wife's getting me an Aquarium Co-op gift card for the holiday. Super stoked. Well, I'm super stoked too. I would be. Wait, what is this? Press 1 if you'd like Aquarium Co-op to sponsor a wild fish collection in Hawaii. Oh, so if we all press 1, I get to go collect fish in Hawaii without Jimmy? All right. No, that means everyone's got to buy all of our stuff from Aquarium Co-op. We're going to afford that trip. And I already promised, by the way. I already promised that trip with Zenzo. Yeah. Oh, what would I recommend for fertilizer? I mean, obviously, our Aquarium Co-op fertilizer is amazing if that's available. Otherwise, try like Tropicas or Thrive or Dennerlays. There's a bunch of them. I hear the puppies, but they're behind the screen. Tinky. You want to go camping? Oh, come here. Oh. Look at this monster fish. Look at this monster. No, you're far away. Yeah. Oh, don't lick me. Still not in the camera. Oh, there's Sassy in the corner, barely. Barely.
Move the screen.
You can move the screen, it doesn't matter.
Okay. Dog. I had to.
Had to bring Tinky the Destroyer.
Everyone said they wanted here.
You should be a good camp. Oh, you're falling. You're falling.
Quincy.
We're just gonna hold you like this, like a baby. I don't know if I can pick up Wincy. He's such a loaf. Can you imagine me sitting by the fire just rocking Tinky? Sounds good to me, doesn't it? Wincy is the butt warmer. Oh, there you go. Come here, you loaf. Oh. This one's the derpiest.
I'm going to show your tongue, baby.
What you don't see right now is her pencil leg just like jamming into me. There's the tongue.
Out a little bit.
Only a little bit. This is our second rescue. So we gotta get we don't have to, but we might get a larger dog at the new place to protect these.
Or a smaller dog.
Or a smaller dog, apparently. Yeah, Wince is the scaredy cat, aren't you? You can't make me kiss my dogs on stream. They'd probably scare her. Yeah, she does look sad. She's the softest one, though. Oh, help, Mom. Help. I don't know if you're a good camping dog.
If you gave her treats, you know, probably be
did
you see that?
On me. What are you doing? That's peanuts. No. Getting her hair stuck in my beard.
Are you gonna brush her hair for me?
Yeah. Alright, I gotta sit you down and I'm gonna wrap up this show. You can't handle her with one hand. Oh no! Oh no! Oh, Sassy just got a face full. Ah, hair everywhere.
You gotta take some. Look at how bundled she is. She's like,
She has to live in the old lady blanket now. Whoa. We got weighed last time we had that short live stream. She weighed what, 3 pounds 8 ounces?
She's up like 2 ounces.
Yeah, that's up 2 ounces. We've been feeding you up, haven't we? You're lucky she can't see you right now because she would destroy you. Look at this hair. Oh, you can see that. You can see the shadow, I think. I don't have any treats. Normally they come in and they get dad treats. But since we're on the stream. Whoa. Yeah. We smell. Yeah. I don't have a 135-pound lap dog. I have a 3-pound, 8-ounce lap dog. Yeah, someone says only my dog could turn a king-size bed into a twin. These dogs, they all do that standard, like, I only sleep with my arms and legs fully extended. They're pretty good at doing that. We should do some, since it's a green screen, we should do some crazy, like, Sassy's flying stuff. Yeah, we could do that.
Okay.
You all done? It's true that the puffer does weigh, probably weighs more than all my dogs. Not Wincy though. Wincy's like what, 20 pounds? 15 pounds. Yeah. If the dogs visit every stream, we'll never get anything done. We've already spent 10 minutes on dogs, and then if I do it too often, then people are like, I came here for the fish, not the dogs. All right, Sass.
She wants that chicken real bad.
She's smelling it. There's only a few green beans left. No. No. Old and blind. Who said that? Yeah, she's getting, ever since so she's gotten old, and when the time changed, Sassy's clock did not change, so we always feed at 5 p.m. except for this last year with the time change. She starts whining at 4 and does not let up, so she usually has to get like a little bit of lunch meat or something to tide her over, because all the other dogs are fine with it, and she was fine with it every other year prior to this, but she's getting more and more ornery. Going, I know it's 3 minutes till I'm supposed to be fed. I know it. 3 minutes away. All right. Now I can answer a few more questions. Here you go. I did get dog bombed. I'm full of dog hair now, too. We could do an aquarium co-op live stream. There's like the amount, I mean, everyone that works at aquarium co-op is pretty much a pet lover. I mean, kind of obvious, right? But you know, Randy's got a pug. Randy's got a pug and another dog. Robert's got a dog. Like, other people have other animals. I just don't want to spill all the beans in case they don't want everyone to know what they keep. Because then what if you come to the store and like, tell me all about it? So maybe I'll stop talking now. Yeah. No co-op pup auto feeder yet? Not yet. I wish. Yeah. It'd be so easy for me to get into dog and cat stuff because I already need stuff, but I keep threatening to get custom like aquarium co-op dog clothes. Have I bred any more red balloon platies? I have, actually. I've got them in one of the totes. I almost filmed like a fish room update, but my fish room just looks dilapidated because it's not, I mean, every time I get free time, it's like, ooh, I should go work on the new fish room. And so there's like mulm buildup in one of the tanks with fish from Peru. That's really all. I mean, so I got some green water and some other stuff, but like I got to catch all the fish out of there and going to film at the store. I got to take them to the store, so a lot to do. Does Dean have a dog? Dean doesn't currently have a dog. He's got a cat right now. Although last I talked to him, I think he said his wife was wanting a dog again. So a sassy decal? Yeah, maybe, but then see it spirals out of control, and then it's like, well, why doesn't Wincy get one? Why doesn't Tinky get one? Why doesn't? And then, I mean, I could. I mean, she does get, you know, she gets her emoji here, but leads it down a path. And yeah, the Nerms would know her, but I don't know if everyone would know her. Yeah, dog clothes I'm super picky about because too often they don't fit my tiny dogs. So I am wanting to though, because I think it'd be awesome, even if it was just like a one of. But yes, I really try hard in business to stay focused because there's only so much time in a day. So focus on Like, oh, I could launch the next Aquarium Co-op fish product, or guess what? It's Aquarium Co-op dog clothes. So it's easy to get on a tangent, then you're doing stuff you don't want to do, and I still haven't accomplished even half what we want to accomplish in the fish world. So, working on it. It's either like, oh, launch this new product, or launch that. Three-headed chihuahua. After this, we're going over to the Steenfod Aquatics live stream. If you don't want to sit through another live stream, check out our camping adventure. Maybe we'll bring, well, I think we're bringing at least one dog next time. Maybe we'll bring more dogs times after that. We're building up the cast. Pretty soon there'll be more dogs than humans. Yeah. Ladybirds got your din-din. Katie is falling in love with Ladybird, so we're kind of at a, I don't know. Katie really doesn't want to give up Ladybird, so I don't know. Like, Ladybird's gonna outgrow that 230-gallon tank, but the 800-gallon won't fit in the house. So I don't know. Katie's just gonna have to come out, but in general, no one spends as much time out in the studio except for me because I'm always filming or working or doing something, and so naturally that bond will grow apart. So who knows? But all right, it is after 5. It is Steenfod Aquatics time. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for all the super chatters and new members. There'll be a new member video if you're listening to this, probably, as long as I remember to click the button. New member only video tomorrow at some point. So if you're a new member, awesome for you. If you're thinking about becoming a member, you're sitting around bored tomorrow, you could pony up $5 to become a member, watch the whole back catalog and the new one. Yeah. All right, I'm out. Got to make a beanie with a Murphy icon. That's the problem. There's infinite combos, infinite combinations. Too much. Now I think I just inhaled a dog hair. Great. All right, I'll see you guys over there. Hashtag dog hair. We're going hashtag dog hair over at the Steenfod Aquatics, and we'll see you over.